I know my limitations.
Just know how to turn the recorder on, right?
Well, actually, we've even got Kate doing that.
Oh, okay.
She's gonna do it off this. So,
So you don't have to take shorthand or anything.
no, sir. You know, it's funny you said that. When I first got started in public service, our city recorder in my hometown
Yeah,
take the minutes by shorthand.
yeah. I took a
Now, if you
college
say
class.
something about it, people's like,
Yeah, right.
Call yesterday, there's new AI programs that you invite to the call
Yep.
and they put everything to text and then organize it based on topics and then give you bullet points.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? If you started with something, we're talking about the tower, and you talked about other stuff, and you came back and talked about the tower.
Yeah.
Summary, it was put the tower notes back together and then summarize all. things.
That is even scary. Wow.
I'd look it up. I was like, that's so cool.
Wow.
The world that we're in now.
Well,
Yeah, that's
I'm sitting on around.
impressive and scary.
You said that,
Same time,
right?
right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had forgot, I meant to. She earlier.
Listen.
We good. Yeah.
if they agree to do. Have a special call meeting, I'll say it. All we got to do is notify.
Well, yeah,
Like you said.
I'm still gonna, I'm like ready to stand there like.
Paul,
that's all.
do you know if Linda is attending?
She has not informed me, but,
Do we need to
She's
wait?
invited.
for-
Bobby,
Okay.
last month you were talking about duck sand being chemicals instead of just batteries. Did they not know that before they came?
Yes.
Did the city not,
So,
Yes, ma'am.
and they
You
let
wanna
it happen
wait till Shelley?
anyway?
Very
That's
quiet.
what I thought. Yeah.
Bill
it was
usually comes in at
Project
the last minute.
Violet or
Actually,
orange
about
or
2 minutes
purple or
past the last.
something. You know, there's a
We give him,
plant,
hey, we give him the world, he gave us the world to get up.
yeah. What I thought. There's a one in Clarksville that they were building and they just shut down and quit building on it. But maybe they'll do this one.
Gotcha.
If we had a
All right, well, thanks.
past employee that went to work for the union
Kate said
for the
that
battery
we're kinda quiet
factory in
on
Clarksville.
Yeah.
So if we
They
need
just
to-
shut it down.
Remind us to.
Construction, yeah.
He's got. Yes.
Any reason to?
Get up. Good to see you. Get up. Good to see you.
That one was saying big boy.
Oh, okay.
You say, well, that's really nice. They think the sun rises and sets.
It's nice.
Kelly, will say
In
some
the
more.
bad,
Or sometimes he uses.
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. We pass that to them, sign, pass it across the back. You need a, there's one right there in the. So, no, it's on the table. I don't print. I don't guess I got any extras.
Okay, good.
I thought you were looking for a pen. Sorry.
No, I've got a pen.
Okay, it being noon and having a quorum present, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll calls being sent around. Next up is approval of the agenda, so.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Let me see.
I'll second.
Got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes, citizen comments. Do we have some citizens? Does anybody like to comment today? No, David? Okay, we'll go on to approval of the minutes. Okay,
As written.
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes have been approved. It's all you, Paul.
Just want to point out one thing real quick. if you could, because the fact that Lisa's not here today, Scott's stepping in, but if you could, if there's motions or anything like that, please repeat who's giving the motion so that we can have it on the recording. That's not Scott's full-time job. He's actually my boss, so. So we need to help Lisa as much as we can, but this is being recorded. But there is as part of your packets there is a written version of this report here. We'll just sort of hit the highlights. 24 starting off right with there's 8 different construction projects in some form or fashion around here.
Wow.
2 of them are represented on the row behind you. And those are for 2 of the, both flight schools are remodeling. Actually 3. Sorry, David, I didn't see you over there. There's 3 of the 8 construction are, well, David actually represents 2 of them just in 2 different businesses. So we've got 4. I've got half the construction projects represented right behind you. The terminal, which I hope to, after this meeting, be able to give you a tour if you're up for it, have time. This is a short agenda, so hopefully the time to see the construction that both flight schools have done. They've done a lot to make the places look completely different than they started from. So good to show those off. The other you see are 2 hangars to the north of the T hangars. Those are currently in our planning. They have the same consultant, and so, or not consultant, but same contractor that's going to work with those guys to hopefully give them a good deal and also smooth things through the planning process and the codes process with the city. And he's already done some work on this airport before, so he's familiar. The other 2 that were mentioned, other 2 hangars, the Quigley and Deweese hangars, they have broken ground. They are actually, we had a little small shift in where they were located, so it worked out to their benefit, because now there's a lot less rock. They hit usually there's one big solid rock that goes all the way across this whole airport, but he came across a couple of large rocks and that was it. So he was able to drop the hangars down a little bit lower than was originally hoped for, which helps on the slope of the ramp and slope of the taxiway, and does quite well for us. They're actually delivering rock today to get that started. They improved the road bed up there to bring trucks in, and they're starting the process up there. So they're moving along quite well. The metal is here. The doors are sitting at the manufacturers waiting on the concrete to set up for them so they can deliver the doors, because they're building the same type of doors that Dr. George has. And so it's pretty much what you're doing is you're erecting a door and then putting metal around it. So once the concrete gets formed up, then they'll have the door shipped in. And then the other project we have, which is the Azure project, you're finding that we're going through working with aeronautics and the FAA to go through some of the environmentals on that. That's been somewhat of a delay just because of the fact that it's part of the reason why Azure stepped in was to help speed up the process. Well, FAA's tried to drag them back into the process acting as if they're part of MTSU, which is slowing the process. We're working with aeronautics trying to help get that separated and to help speed that process up somewhat. Right now, there's still plans and still hopes to be able to have airplanes here for the fall semester to get started. Is what MTSU is still hoping, and Azure is still hoping to make that happen. They were hoping Azure's plan was to have MTSU here this summer so they can start figuring out some of the logistics. That doesn't look now it's going to happen, but they're still hoping to be here by the end of the summer so that they can start the fall semester with airplanes here. We'll have more updates hopefully, because there's going to be some more meetings in between before the next meeting. For your next meeting, I'll be able to update you on where Azure's project is as far as the 5-acre parking lot is concerned. The other one is let's see. We have the sewer project that is this is my last time I should report anything on the sheet. Finally, we had the final walkthrough just yesterday, as a matter of fact. They're working the numbers. I've spoken with our city treasurer today. They're working on the final numbers for the final change order to get everything all wrapped up. And hopefully that'll be on, either if it doesn't make this next council agenda, it'll be the following to get the final change order through. But there's a little bit of grass work that needs to be done where it washed over the winter time, and one little small valve needs to be replaced. But other than that, everything works out well. It's the sewer is actually operation and functioning. Found one glitch that we've gotten worked through, and so everything's running properly, which is great. We actually, and so what's gonna be the next adventure with the sewer system is when private entities start connecting to it. So we'll hopefully have that before long. Because we are working with our consultant and Vika to lay out where the water system is going to go now that the hangars sites have been established. We're now going to be able to come through and put the water lines in. And so once that gets connected, then of course, once you get water connected to a building, you got to get it back out. So then they'll be connecting in. The private entities are going to be working together to try to connect all that and share as much of those pump stations as they can and things of that nature. You can look down through here as far as the fuel flow figures are concerned, and some of the revenues associated with that. Revenues are similar, but fuel just January's numbers are here, and everybody seems to recall what was happening in January. Pretty cold, and there's a little white stuff on the ground there for a while, and so that kind of slowed those numbers down a little bit there. But you can still see some of because it reflects as well in the operations that you see where there were some drops in the operations. One of the things that you can see,
I would say you should highlight, we're one of the only airports that was operating when that white stuff was out there.
that's very true. We definitely were, we were down for basically 2 days, where other airports were down for an entire week.
Yeah.
We were down for 2 days. One was the day when it was snowing, and then the other day we took us to get it off and get it usable and reopen. We had other airports, and we actually even had Memphis Center call us trying to confirm that we were open, because all the other ones around us had been reporting closed, and making sure we hadn't forgotten it. And we said, no, we're available. We plowed. We went through the process. So that's going to be a common thing for us. And we've even found some of the issues we have with our snow fleet, and we're adding to, we've been able to get a hold of a used piece of snow equipment too, to be able to even add to it, make it even better. So we can run 2 pieces at a time. Now, if it'll just fall at a convenient time instead of on a holiday or in the middle of the night, then that makes things even that much better. You can also follow through and see on the businesses that are using it. One of the things that I always point out, new stuff that comes through, but it's always nice also to see and point out the regulars. So that means people that are using us over and over again for regular stops. This time of year, we see a lot of pass-throughs when they're headed south for the winter or something like that, when they're dropping customers off and things, they'll come from where we're a good restroom stop and fuel stop for those that are coming from like the Midwest and things like that, headed to Florida, the main body of Florida. If you look under services, the hangar rent, the double sign wasn't there just because the number is big. I copied something and it doubled it up there, but that's a nice number. And some of that's just the reason why the numbers inflated is because at the beginning of the year, we have a lot of people that pay for their rent on an annual basis. But then also we had some of the land leases too were paid. And so that has a tendency to bump our numbers up right at the beginning of the year. Going down through, you can see some of the typical stuff that we have for fuel. Some small repair work that was done. And when I say a safety issue on the fuel farm, we just had some areas that that's a common problem that every airport has. You trying to control vegetation, you spray vegetation. Well, you get turn around in the wet season, you get mud. And so we had some spots that, were people were getting mud on their shoes and slipping on the stairs. And so we put some stone and some walkways and some gravel down to help protect our employees on that. Going through on our maintenance on our vehicles, we had one of the things we had for our Impala, we had a couple that flew in to do some real estate work, and Impala wouldn't start back up for them after they took care of some of the things they did. But eventually it did. By the time our guys were halfway to them to recover them, I guess if you want to call it that, or what they were going to do is swap out vehicles, and they were able to get it started. Turned out there was a grounding cable that was off on the battery because the battery had been replaced on it, and it just was not touching correctly. Some other issues, battery related and tire related, of course, of any maintenance vehicles. We got new tires. We're trying out one thing on our avgas truck that we've not done before, which was we're doing retreads. I don't know if anybody's had experience of that. I mean, we've picked them up on the side of the road plenty of times, and we could probably retread all of our trucks with the stuff we pick up down to 231 on the airport property. But we've had a company come in and it was about half the price. So we're hoping that this is something that we're going to be able to, even with them coming and the labor to do it on site, they were able to come on site, lift the truck, put a retread on the existing tire that we have. And we're hoping it's going to work out for us because the concrete, as nice as it is for airplanes, it's tough on the tires for fuel trucks because of, especially the front ones with the turning on that, and just bites that corner just a little bit each time.
Do those retreads have a warranty, mileage warranty on them at all, of any type?
See, it's for us, mileage is not a factor.
It's not gonna be a real factor.
It's
It's
just
just
hours.
usage.
All of our truck is just, it's just,
Time.
It's time, and on that granular concrete, which kind of
Yeah.
eats away.
so
at-
that's why we're hoping that this is going to be something for us instead of replacing and paying $300 a tire or something, or for $350 a tire, including the labor, because our trucks are not roadworthy. So it's not like we can go drive down to Landers or somewhere like that.
Exactly.
We have to, we're limited as to who can handle it. And even our public works department has done a lot for us as far as maintenance of their vehicles, but we can't even take our stuff to public works because it's not street worthy. We don't want to have to take it. We don't have to load it on a trailer and take it to them because then it really becomes an issue.
I use retreads on all our fuel trucks.
Okay.
I just don't use them on the front tires. Those are the only ones I don't use.
We'll try it and see if it works on,
Yeah.
this one is, I think it was a front, but I can't recall
Yeah.
exactly which one it was, but we'll try it and see. And going down on the buildings, we've got a new sign there on the Kwanzaa hut that's installed.
It looks good.
Our T-hanger, our annual T-hanger preventive maintenance program started January, it goes January, February. It's something that our maintenance crews, we reach out to every tenant and schedule a time. And our guys go through and do everything on the doors, look at anything else, anything's been reported. We carry a lot of spray for, if there's screw heads or something like that have gotten worn that need to be sprayed for, to seal them up a little bit more. We got that. We take care of the cables. We take care of hinges, anything like that that's necessary to make sure that there's no issues with those doors and the T-hangers. So far, they've only had to repair a couple of brackets where somebody apparently forgot to unlatch the far one over there on that far side and tried to open the door and bent the bracket all to pieces. So our guys now can repair those in the shop, and they have the materials here. So it's actually been a lot better this year. It seemed like last year we replaced, I don't know how many feet of cable, but it was quite a bit. That leak repair that's referenced in the maintenance hanger at McCare was the only thing that happened from the little cold spell we had. It was only one small little joint that popped, which was kind of surprising. But everything else worked out well. You might have noticed when you walked through here, I don't know if you did or not, the gentleman was actually here servicing the machine. We got the new vending machine here that's looks good because it's now got food and beverage in the same machine right here. And that's something that we won't be worrying with at the customer service counter anymore. We won't have any little small things like that, and people can get it. They can use a credit card. They can run through it. It's there for convenient purposes so that we don't take a cut of that. We just have it there for the convenience of the passengers and crews. And that allows the price to stay down a little bit too, because we're not adding on to it for something for us. That's just, like I said, just something for those to come through. We've added some weather stripping on the back doors and side doors that in hopes to try to help with the rain because of those same storms when whenever the wind shifts and blows out of the east for some reason. For the most part, everything's blowing out of the west and it's not a factor, but when it does shift on us like it has in the wintertime, we get a lot of water damage coming in the doors. And so we're hoping this will help that issue. The cold patch that's mentioned here is some stuff that was added. We have a couple of head walls on the T-hanger taxiway that we built up and it had washed off. And so we needed time. We put that back on there in hopes it'll stay a little bit longer. That's just an issue with those head walls stick up a little bit too much and we add that to make a slope so that somebody's tire gets too far over to the side, it'll roll back down instead of hitting and damaging the tire. Same thing for the other reference was where the sewer had been cut through some of the asphalt or some of the piping that is that's required the change order, the final change order was because some piping that was not originally plans had to be replaced. Well, with that, they had to cut through some of the asphalt that wasn't originally planned. So we had to go back through and we were putting that on there to cover that up.
I noticed the one by the gate isn't holding up very well. Just kind of already after just a week or so.
Yes, and that'll be something that they've added to some of them. So we'll probably grab that one. It's got a whole.
Okay, hey.
There's, they'll be able to add to that. It's just, what it is it's temporary and that's why it's called patch. Because we have two issues up at the T-hangers on our asphalt from all the construction that's going on. And so those pieces will have to be repaired. And so when we come in and actually do more robust kind of repair, they'll come in and do these officially and do them properly. This is just something just to get them covered. So especially those up there on that gate area because of the big equipment that's going to cross it with the fire trucks and things like that. It's they will continue to just keep filling it in until we can make it a permanent fix.
Still better than I-24 in Murfreesboro.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
I went ahead and added this photo at the end, entertainment purposes too, but because it was an entertainer that flew in on it. But a lot of times the reason why I added that is because people always ask, what's the biggest airplane you can land here? We get that question a lot. And as you can see, there's really not a limit. This is CRJ 200 and it's it can be configured as it actually is, if it's configured for about 30 passengers. So, a lot of people didn't like them. American quit using them because they were pretty cramped, but they're still out there and it's still used as commuters. This was executive setup, so that was set up for about 12 passengers or so.
We do a lot of sports charters on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this as you can see that we can handle most anything. This was because the entertainer that was across the street was double booked, and so he had to be in Indianapolis as soon as he finished.
Wow.
So he was out, and so plenty of other his entourage was quite large. So that's why they brought that larger one. That's actually that's one of David's friends' airplanes, one of Contour's airplanes that came out of Smyrna and was booked for him as a charter. Take him to Indy from here.
I was told there are quite a few that day or night here. Is that right? Quite a few jets.
Not for that, for the fundraiser that was across the
Yeah.
street. It wasn't not necessarily that many for that. We've had some where they've had some come in, but that fundraiser had some other things that they did in Nashville before they came down here. So I think that most of them flew into Nashville.
Okay.
Most of them flew to Nashville and they were bused down or trucked down into down to here as part of the fundraiser. They were showing them some other times in Nashville first where they got. But yeah, that was a significant fundraiser. It was not Uncle Nearest was just the venue that was leased out. It wasn't an Uncle Nearest fundraiser.
Yeah.
But that's one of the advantages and one of the things that we promote so much. And we work with Uncle Nearest. I meet with their people regularly about their events and things like that to make sure we can handle anything that they have and make sure we provide top-notch service, anything that any of their customers they might have come in. Also following through, you've got, I think was part of the packet that was emailed out to you was the financials. If there's any questions that I might be able to answer for you on that.
Not really a question, but I did note that it looks like revenues are exceeding expectations a little bit and your expenditures are less than what you thought. So it looks like you're good on either end.
Yeah.
So far this year.
Right, and some of that is being able to finally start listing some of the land leases that we've been working on. But also it's just the fuel cells are a little bit better this year. Not still as robust as we'd like, but we're working on it. We want that to be a common problem. We want to be able to constantly have to figure out how to get a load of fuel in.
Any questions on the report?
No.
No? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the reports.
Make a motion.
Motion is made by Helene,
Wow.
seconded by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous. Brings us to our one item on new business, air traffic control study TAD application.
It's just part of the packet that you have there on your table. There's a, and it's got Garver's logo on the top. It gives you a work order. I've asked Matt to come out with Garver to join us and speak about this project request.
Sure, absolutely. So this request really kind of, I'm sorry, McLaren, Garver.
Scoot down a little bit more.
Scoot down.
There we go. That's good.
Good deal.
Thank you.
You're in frame now.
All right, so this request goes back to the initial forecast we submitted as part of the ALP, or at least forecast part of this does. When FAA basically said, no, you're projecting 100,000 operations and now you're looking at getting into a contract tower program. We have to go back and we have to do a revised forecast. You're not providing us enough information. There's not enough detail. And at this point, the operations, the data, it's a year or so out of date. So they want us to go ahead and update that. So yes, this is really kind of a two-pronged grant here. One is a revised updated forecast. And the other part of it is the contract tower application, which TDOT has been very supportive of us. It's their kind of first run through the program. So they're making an effort to help push this forward with us. But we are going to be using a sub-consultant who specializes in towers, in carrying towers, building towers. So they're going to go ahead and work with us. CTBX is the name of the company. And hoping to get this grant request approved and turned in on the 28th of this month. That's the deadline for grant request.
The reason for that is under aeronautics, they have certain timelines for when you meet certain criteria with grants. And so they have we're trying to fit it in. The city's been gracious enough to set us up with, if you so choose, an opening for a special call meeting to try to fit into their calendar. If we don't fit into their calendar, this could delay the process for funding for much as 3 months, maybe even 4 months, because of just the way their calendar falls. It's just that way. That's the reason why we're bringing it to you today. But this, if you read through this, we've talked, I know, a lot more about the tower earlier, but I brought him in hopes that we can answer even more, because I want to make sure you guys are very aware of what's going on. Aeronautics is very supportive, and when the aeronautics says it, they've been in talking with FAA. We've had multiple discussions, Matt and myself and MTSU, and also us. We've had discussions with FAA and TAD about the tower idea. FAA is very for it. FAA wants us to make sure that the application process is done correctly and efficiently, so it goes through the process, because each time you got to submit something for a step. Our next step is to become a candidate for the contract tower. For those that might not be familiar, we're not talking BNA. BNA is a federal tower. It's all federal employees. It's a whole thing. Contract tower is a lot smaller, and I might have mentioned it before, but it's something where they're contracted employees. They're trained by FAA, but they're contracted employees. They're civilians. They're doing it. Our hope is to be able to go through the contract tower program, but in turn the employees would be members of the 107th with the Air Guard. As a matter of fact, I have a meeting today at 2:30 with them to discuss that even more with MTSU and Guard and with Aeronautics to discuss that process. Aeronautics has agreed that they see the need here. They see that they've spoken with their group and they would entertain and adjust our ACIP to allow this to be put into the ACIP and to fund this with state money at 95%, 95% state, 5% local. So there is a local match that is required. That's one issue that, you know, because some, and I'll go ahead and I don't mind bringing it up now. That's one of the things that's discussed, saying spending local money on this study. It's a small amount of local money. The local share is, I have to look it up, but it's minimal. It's like $3,000. Even though some have said, well, this is only happening because MTSU is coming. So we've said we're not going to spend any local money on MTSU. You can take that for what it's worth. I mean, $3,000 is not really that much in the scheme of things, because it not only, this updates money across the board. This updates updates numbers across the board. And so it updates it for our airport layout plan and forecasting, but then it also, thank you. No, actually local shares twice that, 6,500.
So the grant itself, the 95% then would be somewhere around 120,000.
131,000.
That's the total.
The total,
That's the
yeah.
total. Okay. Okay. And then the city, should it go forward with it, would be for 5% of that.
3%.
Five. Yeah, 5%.
Okay.
So what it does is in a grant situation like this, we request the full amount. And then in turn, there's a local share. The local share is written as a check from the city back to TAD. They put in the account, and then whenever there's an invoice submitted, they submit and pay the full dollar amount. It's kind of the way it looks. So we have a one-time upfront cost of the local share of $6,500 some change.
And Matt, what is the timeline for all of this? Obviously, there is urgency in that we vote on it and that the city gets it and the city votes on it. What happens then? And how long does it take?
So the big thing we're still having to overcome is the forecast. The forecasts are going to dictate in the benefit cost analysis whether or not Shelbyville belongs in this federal contract tower program. So getting the forecast through, getting that done is going to roll us into the next stage, the benefit cost analysis, and then from there into the application process. So we're probably looking at 5 months or so for the forecast for that still to go. Well, it's FAA, their headquarters have their fingers deeper in this than even previously. So they're watching us like a hawk and making sure the numbers are what they want. It's, or, you know, what we're presenting to them is solid evidence. Like it used to be, you know, for MTSU, you could say, okay, they're doing these operations now. You know, we anticipate they're going to move the same number of operations down here, plus however many aircraft they move in the future. They're wanting all that information now on letterhead from the university, from the dean's office. So MTSU is not difficult. We can get information from them. They're open to sharing all that because obviously they have a vested interest in here. But the other flight schools as well, you know, we'll approach you, and we actually have a template letter we're going to give you so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But yeah, they're just going to go through it with a much finer tooth comb, and we have several meetings set aside as well to make sure as we're going through this process, it's still, they're getting what they want versus putting it all together, shipping it off, letting it sit up in DC for a month, 2 months, them getting back to us and slowing down the process.
So the forecasts then 5 months plus we're in the end of February. So you're looking at the end of July, you've got your forecast back.
Yeah.
When do you anticipate after that turning in your application?
So the benefit cost analysis, I talk with our sub to get a little better idea on what he's thinking, but at that point, he's actually going to help review the forecast, at least for the tower side of it. So he'll already be involved in it to some extent and probably should be able to start putting some of that together. So I don't think there should be a huge delay between our forecast being approved and completing that. And then the application package is, it's putting an application together, and getting that submitted, and, you know, there may be a time for review with FAA.
And that begins the 60-month clock? Is that what I understood from the
Yeah,
last meeting?
yes, yeah, when that application goes in
Okay.
is when that clock starts.
Okay.
So how many operations do you need to have to justify the tower?
It's, I think they were saying 90,000. Here it was 90 something or
Okay.
100, but it's what we're forecasting falls within that. So they're wanting us to prove it more so than what we did before. I mean, we felt like our forecast was justified, and, you know, we had done our due diligence, but the FAA, and in fact, one of our planners was at a conference, and they spoke to them about how airports such as this that are kind of on that threshold, or those above, or those looking at towers, are getting extra scrutiny much more than they used to. And some of the smaller airports like a Lewisburg or something like that, they're kind of shifting some focus away from them. So they're putting more of an effort into Shelbyville. You know, there's similar situations.
Our scenario here, as much as anything, is also what's discussed as the fleet mix. So we'll be gathering from not just the flight schools here, but we've also got the one in Murfreesboro, and we've got 3 in Smyrna that we'll be getting numbers from, because we get used by all of those here. Well, when you're mixing that training in with corporate, that's where the tower is that's where the cost benefit really matters, because I still recall when Rogers Group brought it was Dement Construction brought their airplane. They'd had it for less than 11 hours, and they were already having to do their first hold here because students were utilizing the airspace and had it clogged up. And the guy had to go do a holding pattern in an airplane he didn't have much time in, just right off the bat. He said, I've flown into major class B and C airports and not a problem, but then flying in the Shelbyville, I had to go into a holding pattern. So that's, you know, that kind of stuff is where that tower really makes a difference. It really is a factor. And that's the kind of things that FAA needs to see. And that's what they're looking for, is that mix and how to work through it. The biggest part for the city, and as mentioned, that I want to make sure that the council is aware of too, because I know you guys are, because you're familiar, you see it every day, but is every time that every concern that the citizens brought up, whether it be on the aviation side or on the local neighbors, the tower really addresses a lot of the concerns that were brought up during the time that MTSU's discussion was here. Other times that when we get phone calls about things, even down to the ag operators. The biggest part of it is the control tower will really address a lot of the noise concerns and a lot of the pattern problems. That's a big problem I have a lot of times right now with local pilots coming in and complaining about the way the pattern's being utilized and different things of that nature. And a lot of those concerns will be addressed by I've been waiting for more pushback from some of the local pilots that are, you know, non-electrical airplanes, those that are flying with no radios or whatever. And surprisingly, I'm not getting that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that discussion. I even talking with the local EAA, talking with, you know, our manufacturer who even builds experimentals, you know, some of those would be his clients, even though he builds a higher end experimental, and still he has some of those same people down there. And I've only had maybe like 2 or 3 plane that said that they wouldn't like a tower. I have yet to have anybody say they wouldn't fly in here because there's a tower here.
Right.
The breakfast doesn't seem to be they don't seem to be concerned about it, that as far as I know.
And they're
Not that's been addressed to me.
they're upset with the tower because they will require a radio to communicate with the tower. Is that what their issue is?
Not just that. Lost bottom just don't like, you know, some people are just, they want to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
That's why you have accidents, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly,
why you set up-
exactly.
That's why you
that's what-
established traffic patterns in the first place. And to the guy who didn't want to hold, that's why you learn holding patterns early in your training. You learn how to hold, not to complain about it, but so that you know what to do when it becomes necessary. So it's all about training. And I just wondered if those guys that didn't have radios were complaining about the presence of the tower because it would require communication. You can call the tower before you come in and let them know when to expect you, and they will set you up with
Light
light
signals.
gun signals, right? So
Yeah.
that's no reason really to poo-poo a tower.
So make sure we got that on the recording.
Yeah, I've spoken to the microphone.
Totally said it put that.
Well, the conversations I had with our base tenants, they were concerned with more the increased traffic when MTSU gets here. And I think as you mentioned, this tower kind of solves some of those issues. So, sounds like, they won't face much opposition on that.
One thing that's worth noting too is TDOT through the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission they've said they will set aside funds. If we're approved into this program, they'll set aside funds through the tower siting process and into design. Construction's a little far out for them to determine that yet, but I mean, if we get that far, they put that much effort into it. I don't know why they would all of a sudden not do it.
So we would become Class Delta airspace then, right?
Yeah.
And the tower would be staffed by whoever wins the contract for the contract tower.
Mhm.
Who then pays for those controllers?
Well, that's where being a candidate for the contract tower, that is paid through the FAA. And so the FAA would funnel funds to the 107th or to, if it's outside, if it's the 107 for some reason finds that it doesn't fit in their mission anymore or something doesn't happen, then they'll fulfill it with their whoever
Yeah,
contract
that's-
Robinson or whoever it might be. That's the situation. I mean, Robinson's local, so it'd be hard for him not to get that one, but we would fall into their process and their thing. Now, FAA was excited that we're talking with the Guard. They were very happy about that because the Guard and the Air Force has access to better equipment than most contract towers do.
Yeah.
Contract towers are minimal.
Pair of binoculars.
Pretty much, yeah.
I guess the point was, if you go through with having a tower here at Shelbyville, there might be some concern from the city council or the citizens that, what is this going to cost us ongoing? How much are we going to have to pay for this tower and for the people in the tower? And the answer would be nothing.
Well, that is going to be an issue that will have to be addressed and will be a concern. It's not going to be, the manpower is not going to be an ongoing expense.
Right.
I mean, you're going to have utilities and things of that nature that'll be covered, but the ongoing expense as far as personnel is to the contract program. That's the whole reason why we're putting the process up front. I mean, any airport could really build their own tower and man it themselves. I
Sure.
think you have experience with that before, and others where you have city employees or whomever that might be the actual controllers. And it's a lot of that's just done kind of as advisory. You see that on football game weekends and at Knoxville at Downtown Island, when you fly in for the football games there, they have a temporary tower that pops up just for that weekend. And
And the university pays for that usually.
a lot of times, yeah, they give some sort of kickback for the local people to make that happen. Something like that. They might not cover the whole cost, but they give, a donation of some kind to make that happen. Ole Miss might do the same. They might pay for the whole thing. I'm not sure exactly, but they could. So I'm sure that there's an agreement of some kind between Knoxville and the city and whoever the expense is. But there will be a lot more work required as far as where local money comes from, where things will work through. That's where the influence of the little lapel pin he's got right there, where MTSU will come in handy. And that's the reason why there's been MTSU's been involved in the discussions about the control tower from day one. They have access to some different pots of money that could take care of the local share to cover. But the cost, I mean, you're looking at, depending on how tall the tower is, I mean, you're talking, it's not like the $5 million hangar anymore, $5 million tower anymore. You're talking $15 million to build a hangar.
But what you're talking about, let's build a hangar.
I want hangars, yes. I guess that's what's on my mind. I don't want, what I'm thinking about is I don't want to divert any of my money towards this process and lose a hangar because of having to put it towards a
Yeah,
tower. So,
right.
um,
Those are cap costs that you're talking about in terms of capital expenditures
Sure.
for a permanent asset. So an exchange of cash for an asset, but I'm talking about how would it affect the budget going forward and operating expenses. Yeah, and it sounds like. it
And that's
would.
what the program covers.
yeah,
Basically.
yeah, right, exactly. That contract program, that's the whole reason for
Good.
doing this way and doing it properly up front is becoming a candidate and following through, and then the FAA manages it all. That's your air conditioning, that's your,
Yeah,
Wonder if that's what that was.
yeah.
another cap cost.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm glad you said that. I'll mention that later. Sorry. Too many different things going through my head. But, what other answers or what other questions might you have on the tower to make sure that, I mean, because this is the first thing that you did was just a letter, and the letters are simple. This is actually requiring money, and you're stepping in. I mean, you're not a candidate, so you're not like you're committed to, and you're still not committed to building it. But once the application this data is gathered and an application is submitted, you're committed.
So what we're being asked to recommend to the city council today is that we approve Garver's request for the study to be done and the grant be turned in, and its local match would be about $12,000.
Local matches, 65.
I'm sorry, 65.
$6,500. And it's, you're requesting for us to apply for a grant for aeronautics to cover the cost, to gather the data and update the forecast for the airport layout plan, which works parallel with
Right.
the application for air traffic control tower.
Right, it's really two things.
It is
It's two things. It's to ask the city to pay 131,722 to pay, update the forecast and do the application. Is that right?
Correct. That forecast is utilized in that application process, so that's why that we're able to. Because if you recall before, when I brought before you the airport layout plan, you can, a planning document that's using federal money can only be amended with time. It can't be amended for money.
Right.
And so because of the delays that were happened with the forecasting that we had with FAA, because the number was so big and there's some political things involved too. It was delayed. And so now they're asking for more up-to-date numbers that Matt referenced. That again, is a way for us to pay for those updated numbers. So this all works together hand in hand, hand in glove, whatever you want to call it.
Anything else we should know, Matt?
I don't think so. Do you have any other questions for me?
Anybody have any questions?
Just a quick one. First, you mentioned as you go through this research and development, the FAA is going to be right next to you, step by step, right, watching you and making sure that you.
It was part of the updated forecast.
Yes. And so is that, would you consider that a good thing possibly? Because if they're watching you as you go along, the final product is pretty much going to be on.
I think, yes, I do think that's a better thing, especially because they've already seen it. If they kind of gave us a cold shoulder, I'd be worried that we're going to get to the point where we're going to do a bunch of work and submit it, and they're going to say, no, that's not right. That's not what we wanted.
But if they're there.
At least as we're going through it, they can say, well, hey, I think you could go back this way with something.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing to do.
No.
That's what they want to do.
Yes.
What does CTBX stand for? You said you had.
Control towers by experience.
By experience. Thank you, Matt.
And they go around build contract towers.
They do. Yep.
I do have a question. Well, maybe you can answer. There's a possibility of this, of Shelbyville becoming the center for a series of virtual towers. So he mentioned, Paul had mentioned that there were other airports
Grant.
that probably going to be turned down for towers. They saw the need, but would they consider being us being a virtual tower and we doing the controlling from here?
The virtual tower, as far as a traditional air traffic control tower, seems to have
Right.
kind of died down quite a bit. I mean, I think
Why did it die down? Was it not very
I think-
effective?
I think it's just they weren't quite sure how to.
Implement it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
Cause, yeah, we talked about that early on, like, well, is this a candidate where essentially you just have a pole with cameras mounted on it?
Yeah, yeah,
But that's, I don't know if there's an official FAA's cooled down on that or not, but we've just seen that. Now, as far as ground control ramps, we're actually, Garver's working with another company to do ground control ramps at different airports throughout the country. So that's still going on, but the air traffic control, like a local tower, working your airspace is not, we're not seeing any traction on that.
Okay.
Well, if I can, let me just make certain I understand. So will you do the grant application to see if we are able to do this? Is that right?
This is a request to submit the application. So yes, there's a system called Black Cat that we utilize with TAD that submits the actual application
For the grant?
for the grant.
Okay,
We
so-
would not execute this work order unless the grant is
Okay.
approved.
And how long will it take on the grant?
I'm trying to remember the calendar. That's part of the reason why we're asking for things to sort of.
It's usually about a 2-month wait.
Okay. But this doesn't have to go to council, right?
I think that's a good call because that was confusing.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. We first have to get the grant. If we don't get the grant, this is a little bit early.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
just provided as backup for where the dollar amount came from for the grant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if in the
Gotcha.
2 months, the grant, we get to execute a
Okay.
grant, at that point, we'll execute a work order with the city.
then this really comes before you to approve and send to council that if you get the grant. I'm following you correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
So then that changes kind of the nature of the motion. We are just then,
just trying to understand.
me too.
Just trying to understand what's happening here because I didn't know, we kept talking about the grant and I'm like, look, my council's about to sign something that says they're gonna owe $131,000.
No, I'm sorry, I should have explained it a little bit better. This is a work order, but this is a sort of the standard way on most of our requests for design or whatever, we work up a work order through Garver so that they have backup for where that amount, we didn't just arbitrarily pick a number out of the air. We have
Gotcha.
backup for where
Sure.
that number came from. And so I'm sorry, that was probably an assumption. of mine.
Similar to a quote.
Yeah. similar
Right,
to a-
gotcha.
Mhm.
So is it, could go one of two ways. It
We
seems
may never
like
do this.
that either we're authorizing you to do the grant request, or we're authorizing this subject to getting the grant.
That would be.
Which
that what
is-
you want? That would be better, just so.
That's
that we
what
don't
you're
have to-
wanting, I think.
So that we don't have to we
Come
don't have to
back
bring this
here
up to you again.
Yes, because otherwise I'd hate, you go to the city council and they turn you down after you've done the grant, and you've got it approved and everything else. You want to know up front,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
That's-
Subject to getting the grant.
Keywording.
Yes, let's go forward is what I think you're asking. for.
Yes, that is correct. And that would be the ideal. And this is just we've already presented it to aeronautics and aeronautics has already said, go through the process. But so it would be unusual if something were not to happen. But yes, that is a very key term is it
Okay,
is
so
all subject to receiving the money from the grant.
let me ask one more question. Give me your elevator speech to the city council on why we want a tower.
Why we
You
want a
got
tower.
30 seconds. Why do we want a tower?
We want a tower to address concerns from local pilots and local citizens about the use of the airport. Big part of it is noise for the locals and traffic for the local pilots. So a tower, through all the meetings we've had with MTSU and others, planning meetings, towers seem to be the best form of action to correct any concerns that they have or address any concerns that they have.
And there's big bold letters over what he just said. Safety.
Yeah.
I agree.
SAS.
See, that's where I was
That's
going.
what you need
That's
to
where I
let
was
them
going.
know, safety.
Safety. It puts Shelbyville on the map.
Right.
Because we're one of the few
Absolutely.
that, all the others around here don't have towers.
Correct.
So it starts differentiating. So there's a marketing pitch in what you're going to say. There's a safety pitch in what you're going to say. There's a lot in a 30-second elevator speech. Practice.
Will do. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So,
We'll
Mr.
give, we'll
Chairman, I
give him
think that-
3 minutes. He gets 3 minutes.
I think that clarifies for you, you were asking for direction on the motion, and I think that kind of
Yeah,
what he was talking
Yeah.
about, subject to.
in fact, Gary, you were so eloquent with your,
I move, I move acceptance of this contract. Well, I move that we recommend to the city that they execute this contract, subject to receiving a 95% grant from the state. Is that right?
I second.
okay, so we have a
Don't have
motion
to
made by
repeat
member
it.
Gary and a second by member Helene. All in favor? Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Yay. I see no old business on there, but I'm not sure if this is the place to remark it. But Paul had mentioned that after this meeting, the board and anyone in the room is invited to see the revisions of the spaces that the two different flight schools have made to their locations. So there's been some construction, and I've seen the downstairs, and it's a really good use of space. So I'm looking forward after this meeting to walking. So, but seeing no other old business, looks like there's some announcements on the March Authority Board meeting and Aviation Day.
Yep, and one others that I forgot to mention earlier, and I should have put it in my report, and I apologize, but I wanted to bring your attention. And I did inform the city manager that we did not qualify for the grant for upstairs that we requested, the bipartisan infrastructure law. In Tennessee, 2 airports received it, and it was Big Nashville and Tri-Cities. So only 2 air carrier airports in Tennessee received money under that latest bipartisan infrastructure law set aside for terminal construction. I'm afraid seems to be a trend. I'll be working with aeronautics to try to come up with some other forms of money somewhere else. I've already mentioned it to them. There's some other pots to pull from. We'll see. I'm just trying not to pull it away from the hangars that I want. But
Always
just to let you know that I should have put the report, I forgot. But
That doesn't affect any of the leases that we had. They were worded such
Yes,
that
that is correct.
they were contingent upon anything that way.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah, you've got a flyer there for Aviation Day. Feel free to hang it in your business or put it on the refrigerator, whatever you want to do. That's for you to have for a reminder. And please come, please join, and we'll be asking for assistance in all different forms or fashion. I have Eric out there directing traffic.
I can do that.
Anything to bring something in, if you know people, invite them to come to, not only come attend, but if they've got some need airplanes, bring something in, if they helicopters, whatever. We'll hot air balloons, David, back there in the back. Anything that we can bring we want to show all different aspects of aviation at that, and that's the idea. We'll have everything from paragliders to manufacturers to, we'll have our neighbors are all invited too. So you'll see representatives from all of our surrounding neighbors.
Whiskey and wings.
You never know.
Probably not a
We
good
could go that way.
Yeah, probably not.
Horsepower.
Any other announcements to be made? Okay, hearing none, I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Eric.
See,
8 hours all of the time.
I thought it was no drinking within 50 feet and no smoke within 8 hours. Notice that.
You just added.
Just turn that around and you'll have it.
Is there an air show this year?
Okay, next year.
Okay.
Every other year.
Every other.
You have a heart in the
Oh, no, I'm like, I think requires us all.
Yeah, I was thinking we needed to, I thought we needed to sign
31.
them right now, and I couldn't.